We're just a couple weeks removed from Super Bowl 59, which obviously closed out the 50s for the Super Bowl. So in today's video, I wanted to take a look back at the 10 Super Bowls in the 50s and rank them based on their entertainment value, how much I specifically enjoyed the games from an entertainment standpoint. This isn't me ranking the champions or how good I thought these teams were. This is strictly based on how entertaining I thought each 10 of these games were. So definitely let me know your list down in the comments. I think everyone's list is going to be a little different, but let's just get right on into the list. So coming in at last place, coming in at number 10, the worst Super Bowl of the 50s, in my opinion, was Super Bowl 53. This was between the Patriots and the Rams. This ended up with the Patriots winning their sixth Super Bowl. This final score was 13-3, so this was a very low-scoring game, and it was very out of character for the Los Angeles Rams, who during this season were one of the most high-powered offenses of their era. And then for them to go on and run into the buzzsaw that was the New England Patriots dynasty, the defensive genius of Bill Belichick, and only put up 3 points. Jared Goff looked awful in this game. The Rams as a whole just could not move the ball throughout this game. And it's not like the Patriots offense was humming either. They only put up 13 points in this. However, it was enough to get it done in this one because the Patriots defense was that good in this game. So if you're a fan of defense, if you're a defensive-oriented fan, I know there's not a whole lot of them out there, but if you're someone who likes defense more than offense, this was the game for you. As it turns out for me, though, I'm not that type of way. I'd rather the score be 58-55. That's the type of football that I like. So for me, I'm not even exaggerating when I say this. I'm not joking. I actually fell asleep during this game because it was so boring. Julian Edelman ended up winning this Super Bowl MVP. I think it's just overall a very boring, forgettable Super Bowl. But like I said, it is definitely a testament for Belichick's greatness, for his defensive genius. So I don't want to downplay that because you could argue this was the greatest showcase of Belichick's defensive philosophy. But for me, like I said, I'm ranking these just these games in terms of their entertainment value. And for me, this was not an entertaining game whatsoever. Coming in at ninth place, we have Super Bowl 50 between the Broncos and the Panthers. Some people might rank this higher. I get it was kind of the feel-good moment of Peyton Manning getting his second Super Bowl in his final game in the NFL. And obviously, if you're a Broncos fan and all that. But for me in particular, this was a really rough watch. This was the first year I was really vested within the NFL where I actually cared. 2015 was the year where I really first got into the NFL. And it was all because of Cam Newton. Cam Newton, for me, is still probably my favorite athlete of all time. And that might sound weird as a Steelers fan, but yeah, I didn't really pay attention to sports in general. And then I saw some highlights of Cam, and I was like, what the fuck is this? I had never seen that style of football. I was used to watching, old school beat-you-up Steelers football at my house, but the way I saw Cam play that MVP year, I'd never seen anything like that ever, and I never was a big sports fan, but seeing that, I was like, whoa, that I want to watch that. So I became a massive Cam fan. And then to see what happened in that Super Bowl game was devastating as a massive Cam Newton fan because he totally let the team down. He let me down. And it basically created his career-defining moment, which is one of the worst Super Bowl moments of all time, is where he just didn't dive on the football. And that's going to live in infamy as, like I said, probably one of, if not the worst plays in the Super Bowl, because he could have clearly dove on the ball, probably would have recovered it. But for some fucking reason, Cam Newton didn't dive on the ball, and they obviously lost the football game. So for me as a Cam fan, seeing that and just having to deal with years and years and years of people clowning on Cam for not jumping on the ball and him completely choking in the big game, yeah, that one still hurts. It's always going to hurt because, like I said, Cam Newton really was my first he was the guy that got me into sports. So to see it happen that way, for him to play that bad, for him to have that all-time blunder, this is never going to be a Super Bowl that I look back on fondly. I mean, it still hurts me to this day. But moving on now, coming in at number 8, we have the most recent Super Bowl. It's only a couple weeks old. That was Super Bowl 59. between the Chiefs and Eagles, obviously the Eagles did win this one 40-22, but that final score is nowhere near reflective of how dominating of a performance this was for the Eagles. I don't want to downplay the shock value. You know, if you're into like surprises and upsets, this definitely was a Super Bowl for you. But in terms of the game being competitive, it was not competitive from the jump. The Chiefs couldn't move the ball. Their O-line completely fell apart. They were completely fucking dominated by the Eagles' defensive line, and Jalen Hurts had a masterclass really on offense. Almost played a perfect game. It just wasn't competitive. You know, I did enjoy the Super Bowl. Don't get me wrong, because I had money on the Eagles. I enjoyed watching the game. But when I'm ranking it from entertainment value, it wasn't an entertaining game. It was an absolute fucking slaughter, a total beatdown. It was fun to see that happen to the Chiefs, you know, because they'd won so much. We wanted to see a new team win. I like a lot of the Eagles players, so I did enjoy it, but it just doesn't really compare to the other Super Bowls because it wasn't a close game. This game was pretty much over by halftime. We pretty much knew with how the Chiefs were playing. It looked like really their team gave up by halftime. And I felt like Mahomes was really the only player trying. Like, he was running around for his life, trying to pull plays out of his ass. And it felt like the Chiefs kind of just gave up on this game halfway through. And it was just a total beatdown. But, you know, if you're an Eagles fan, or if you had money on it like I did, I only had $50. You know, I won. I bet 50 on the Eagles money line plus 100. So I bet 50. I won 100. It was cool. I liked it, but just an absolute slaughter of a game. At number 7, we have Super Bowl 54, the Chiefs versus the 49ers. This was the Chiefs' obviously first Super Bowl win with Patrick Mahomes. And really the big memorable thing I remember from this one was Jimmy Garoppolo completely airmailing a pass to Emmanuel Sanders, which essentially would have iced this game, because if you don't remember, the 49ers had a 10-point lead on the Chiefs going into the fourth quarter. Then Patrick Mahomes was not playing good in this game until the fourth quarter. I don't know exactly what happened. He woke up and it was just an absolute avalanche of points. Like I said, they were down by 10, and then they went on to win this game 31-20. So they had an eruption of 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. And it was a cool moment back then, you know, before we knew the Chiefs were going to, you know, go on to become the evil empire like in Star Wars. Before we knew they were going to go on to become like the villains of the NFL. This was kind of neat to see Andy Reid, you know, get his first Super Bowl. It was cool to see Mahomes, you know, in this crowning moment. But outside of like that, it wasn't too memorable. I don't remember a whole lot of other moments from it, but overall it was a fun Super Bowl. It was cool to see the Chiefs come back, being down 10 in the fourth quarter. Coming in at number 6, we have Super Bowl 55. This was another Super Bowl that wasn't that close. This was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers crushing the Chiefs. But the reason why I put this a little higher, even though it was a blowout, because it was a blowout, it was 31-9. So you might say, well, 59 was a blowout and you put it lower. How come 55 gets, you know, a little higher and that was a blowout? The reason is the storylines. If you're into like the soap opera-ness of the NFL, which the NFL is a soap opera, it is about the storylines as much as it is about, you know, the plays and all that. The whole storyline of, you know, you have like the new generation superstar, the next face of the NFL with Patrick Mahomes going up against the, you know, Tom Brady, who is viewed as like the last generation's best, you know, like it's the greatest all time versus the guy who could go on to become the next greatest of all time. So it's like this cosmic all-time matchup, epic scale of the young lion versus the old lion, who's going to come out on top, and Brady proved why he is the best quarterback of all time. Now, I get it. Patrick Mahomes was at a disadvantage in this game because his offensive line was totally banged up for injury reasons, and the reason, probably the main reason why the Bucs won this game was because their defense more so than even Brady. But I just think for the storyline of that, for the Brady versus Mahomes aspect, you know, we never got Brady versus Aaron in the Super Bowl. We never got Brady versus Breeze in the Super Bowl, but we did get Brady versus Mahomes in the Super Bowl. And I do think it was an all-time matchup to see those two duke it out in the Super Bowl, and Brady proved why he is the best of all time because his team won in dominating fashion, and Mahomes just did not look very good in this game. And a part of me was rooting for Tampa in this game as a Steelers fan. Antonio Brown, I know things ended bad with AB with Pittsburgh, but I don't know. I have this weird thing. I just still liked AB at that time. Now I just think he's nuts. I mean, how could you not? But at that time, I was happy to see Antonio Brown win the Super Bowl just for, everything he did when he was in Pittsburgh. So a little part of me was happy to see that. And he did get a touchdown in that Super Bowl game. But moving on now to the top 5. Coming in at number 5, we have Super Bowl 57. This was the first matchup between the Chiefs and the Eagles where the Chiefs won. But the reason why I ranked this above the Eagles victory, the reason why I ranked this above 59 is because this was actually a competitive game. Even though I wanted the Eagles to win this game was a lot more entertaining to watch. Jalen Hurts outdueled Mahomes, had his best game as a pro. It was back and forth the entire game and went all the way up until the final play of the game. And then it was kind of spoiled at the end because Bradbury, I believe it was James Bradbury with that pass interference, which essentially ended the game for the Eagles. So it was kind of a shitty ending, but it was a thriller leading up into that, how it was back and forth. It was really high scoring. It felt like the Eagles actually had a real shot to upset the Chiefs in this one, and I just felt like the stakes are high in every Super Bowl, but whenever it goes so back and forth like that, I always feel like those are the best Super Bowls, whenever they're answering each other play for play. It's kind of like a chess game. They're dueling with each other instead of like these blowouts. That's why I rank these games a little higher, where they're back and forth, or maybe we saw a big comeback happen. But number 4, we have Super Bowl 58, the Chiefs versus the 49ers. So I like this one more. Well, of all the Chiefs' Super Bowl wins, of their 3 Super Bowl wins, this is the only one that I actually had money on the Chiefs on. So that part of me did like it because I did win some money that night, having money on the Chiefs. But even if you didn't have money on either of the teams, this was a really entertaining game, especially when you look at the fact that this was another game where the 49ers had a lead on the Chiefs going into the fourth quarter. The Chiefs were able to push it to overtime, and then you had that blunder in the overtime where the 49ers take the ball instead of deferring, where they just didn't understand the roles, and then the Chiefs drive down the field and go on to win the Super Bowl. And I think everyone knew the second the Chiefs got that ball in overtime, everyone knew it was over, and to see it happen, it was an all-time great moment to see it happen, to have a repeat, I don't remember, I'm not as good as an NFL historian as I think I am for the NBA, so I don't remember the last time a back-to-back champion happened. Maybe it was the Patriots in the early 2000s. I don't know. You have to let me know in the comments, but it was a cool moment to see it back-to-back and for them to come back in overtime. I believe this was only the second Super Bowl ever to go into overtime, and just for the fact that the Chiefs came back, it was an entertaining watch for sure. Coming in at number 3, we have Super Bowl 56 between the Bengals and the Rams. Of all the Super Bowls I've bet on, this was not only the first Super Bowl I bet on, but it's also the Super Bowl where I won the most money. So it's a fond memory for me from that reason. This was the sporting event that I won the most money betting on. So for me, it does have kind of a personal value there. And what I did was, like all these different betting apps will essentially give you free money to bet if you make a new account. And at that time, I had just turned 21 just a couple months before, so I'd never made any of these betting accounts. So right before the Super Bowl, they had all these promos for new customers, get all this money if you sign up. So I basically made all these accounts and just put it all on the Rams. And it turned out to pay off, and the Rams won. And even when you take out my anecdote of winning money, it was just a fun Super Bowl. It was kind of a breath of fresh air after seeing the Chiefs be in the Super Bowl a couple of times, and obviously with Brady being in it so many times, to finally get 2 brand new teams. I mean, I know the Rams were in it a couple years before, but this was such a different team from that 2019 Rams team because, Gurley was gone. Stafford was now there instead of Goff, and you just had a lot of different players on that team that weren't really there for the Super Bowl 53 runs. So I did like this team a lot. They had a lot of fun players. Jalen Ramsey, Cooper Kupp, OBJ caught a touchdown in this one. Stafford was on an absolute heater in the playoffs. And the Bengals put up a bigger fight than I even thought they would, because they came within a play of winning this game. And, it's really one of the most surprising playoff runs I've ever seen. For that Bengals team essentially came out of nowhere and went on this run to the Super Bowl and actually almost won it. Whereas I thought going into this game, the reason why I put all that money on the Rams is because I thought it was going to be like a bludgeoning, a curb stomp, but it wasn't. It was a competitive game, another game that went right up to the wire, and the Rams were able to pull it out. It was just a really fun experience for me. I really enjoyed this game. And, I was glad to see the Rams win because it felt like they were, I don't want to say like the first team because we've obviously seen a lot of teams throughout history dump a lot of money into getting star players and all that. But at least to like this era, the Rams to me felt like a team that went all in on like these great star players. And that's not always a winning recipe, especially we've seen that happen in the NBA where teams like just go all in on star names and it blows up in their face. But it actually did pay off for the Rams here, and I liked a lot of those players like Jalen Ramsey, like OBJ, like Von Miller, Aaron Donald. It was just a fun team with a lot of like all-time greats, so to see them win it was a cool moment. So coming in at number 2, we have... You could argue this to be number 1. You could honestly argue this was the best Super Bowl ever from an entertainment value, not just of the 50s, of every Super Bowl ever, and that is Super Bowl 51. The Patriots beating the Falcons, coming back down from 28-3. Now, I remember when I watched this game, I watched it with my buddies. My one buddy was like a diehard Atlanta Falcons fan, and he liked them before they were even good that year. Like, he didn't jump on the bandwagon. He liked the Falcons before they were, like, dominant that regular season. And so I remember we were watching it, and we were all having a good time because we all were rooting for the Falcons. And it just slowly started happening. It was like a snowball rolling down a cliffside. It was the snowball effect. I mean, in the moment, it sucked to watch because I wanted the Falcons to win. But looking back on it now, I do think you can argue this is the greatest sports event ever, just because we've never seen anything like this. For the Patriots to be down 25 points essentially halfway through the third quarter and able to come all the way back, getting it to overtime and winning in overtime. It was the first Super Bowl ever to go into overtime, and the Patriots were able to close it out in overtime after coming back down 28-3. I think it's the greatest thing I've ever seen in sports. Now, obviously, I didn't like to see it at the time because at that time, this was before the Chiefs were the big bad of the NFL. The Patriots were the big bad that everyone hated. And to see this happen, and the Falcons, they were another team like similar to the Rams. Like, they weren't as stacked as that Rams team that won it, but they had so many fun players on that team. All kinds of fun players. Of course, Julio was, I loved Julio Jones. So I felt so bad for him, especially some of the catches he had in this game. And then, of course, he had the Edelman catch, which is one of the just fucking craziest, mystical, magical catches we've ever seen in a Super Bowl game. It's an all-time great moment, to see it happen. I think you really can argue that it is the crowning achievement of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick's careers. These are the best people at their positions. This is the best quarterback ever and the best head coach ever, and I think you can safely argue that this is the crowning achievement of both their careers, to come back from that much at that point in the game, to get it to overtime and win the game. It's the craziest fucking thing I've ever seen. I remember right when New England won, it was like dead silent at my house with my buddies over watching. We were like just so stunned at what we just saw. Like, it was hard to believe, like, to just see something, to see a collapse of that magnitude. I don't think it will ever happen again. But it's not my favorite Super Bowl from the 50s. My favorite Super Bowl was Super Bowl 52, where it felt like the NFL collectively got our revenge on the Patriots. And that was obviously the Eagles winning their first Super Bowl trophy, beating the Patriots. So I don't, I wasn't obviously betting back then, so I don't know what the spread was, but if I had to guess, like, New England had to be heavy favorites in this game, if at least like 4 or 5 point favorites, which is a lot for a Super Bowl. Typically, Super Bowls are pretty even. You know, I think the Chiefs were 1.5 point favorites this past year. So I want to say the Patriots were pretty comfortable favorites in this game, especially with Carson Wentz being injured. You know, with the fact that the Eagles even if they had Wentz, and back then, you got to remember, Wentz was good back then. I mean, had he not gotten injured, he would have been the 2017 MVP. People forget about that. So even if they would have had fully healthy prime MVP Carson Wentz, I still think they would have been heavy underdogs in this game. But they didn't even have him. They had a career backup journeyman in Nick Foles. And to see this renegade underdog team that basically no one thought had a chance go on to beat the greatest dynasty in the history of football. I mean, this is like essentially like a movie playing out, like to just have such a massive underdog beat the big bully of the NFL. And it was just a blast to watch, because not only did you have that storyline going into it, but it was also one of those games that was back and forth. It had a ton of scoring. You know, the final score was 41. Here, I have it written down, 41-33. You know, this was a really high-scoring game. I think Tom Brady broke the passing yards record for a Super Bowl in this game, I'm pretty sure. He went over 500 yards passing this game, so we got an all-time performance from Brady, but it just wasn't quite enough because the Eagles were so fucking red hot going into this game. They just captured that lightning in a bottle that you rarely see, especially from an underdog team like this, and Nick Foles becoming the most unlikely Super Bowl MVP probably in the history of the league. So that's been it for me ranking the last 10 Super Bowls, the Super Bowl 50s decade. So definitely let me know your list down in the comments. Let me know what your favorite Super Bowl was to watch. If you made it this far, appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe.